Welcome once again to SoCo Chat, a podcast where we hear directly from county leaders, discuss the latest news, and talk about all things concerning our beautiful corner of California known as Sonoma County. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to SoCo Chat. Today, we're very honored to have back with us Supervisor James Gore, who represents our Sonoma County's 4th District. He's full of energy, coming right off of a very important board meeting, so we're looking forward to talking with him about a number of things, including the outlook for the upcoming wildfire season, as well as the latest on plans by the Koi Nation to build a resort casino on a 68-acre plot of land in the Shiloh neighborhood just outside of Windsor. But before we get to all that, as usual, we want to start with our trivia question for the day. And our question this week is this: what is your evacuation zone? Just be the first to call or write in with your zone. And if we can verify if it's correct, you will win today's prize, which is, once again, one of our SoCo Chat mugs and a special prize, a go bag supplied by Supervisor Gore and the 4th District. And here's a hint. If you don't know your zone, you can look it up by just going to socoemergency.org, where they have a great Find Your Zone site. If you know your zone, call us 707-565-2242 or email us at publicaffairs@sonoma-county.org. And if you're correct, you'll get our prizes for today, so you don't want to miss out on that. So with that, let's get on with our discussion.
2 things about your announcement, though. Come on now. I sat down and I'm like, I know what my zone is. And I'm like, oh, gosh. So I just looked up mine.
There you go.
SON-2L5. It was pretty quick.
Nice.
Put in my address. It's a great reminder. You said you put yours up on your fridge.
I put it up in my fridge. So
there's always the idea that we can always look it up during a disaster. But as we've learned, is sometimes our cell phone coverage drops and other things. Second thing, this emergency bag, this go bag, you're supposed to fill it with the things for your family as well.
Yeah.
Like in there is 3 days worth of water and food. And when we had the Earthquake and Fire Expo this last weekend, and we gave out about 1,500 of these bad boys, to 3,000 people that came in and showed up and did all kinds of work and actually had fun together. My son was like, well, let's try this stuff out. And I said, okay, it's time to do this. So we opened up these the food packets and a little bit of the water packets.
Good.
The food packets were remarkably kind of like a protein bar.
Okay.
Real dense stuff.
Yeah.
But good. I
That's
think
great.
I can survive on it for
But like you said, it's a
3
start.
days?
Yeah.
Maybe 1. I'm a little big these days, Paul.
Well, they telling you better be ready to be on your own for 72 hours at least. So it's certainly a good start. We have a Go suitcase at home with not just food and water, but a whole bunch of clothes. And we'll add this to our.
My wife and I, we created a second kind of set of small file cabinet area.
Right. Yeah.
It sucks when you get evacuated, but when you evacuate, you better have things like the birth certificates and the deed to your house and other things because, one of the crazy things that we always know, and we'll get into wildfire season, I think, here in a minute, but is that 2/3 of the fires, home fires, start from ember cast. That's right. It's raining embers during those high wind events. It's different if you have those radiant events where it just comes through into a whole community, but it's shows you what you do on your property is the most important. Yeah,
well, you are right. We are going to get to that in a second. But before we do, I just want to talk a little bit about the casino. Yeah. All right. Now, 3 years ago, the Board of Supervisors adopted a resolution opposing the construction of the Koi Casino up on Shiloh. Then recently, the board filed a declaration signed by Chair Linda Hopkins on behalf of the full board. Yeah. Right. Opposing the Koi Nation on another matter. This one concerned the Koi Nation's attempt to dismiss a lawsuit that was brought by the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria, which was against the Department of Interior, which had already taken the land into trust, which essentially opens the door to the building of the casino, right? So there's a lot of moving pieces here, but what are your thoughts about the project and where it stands?
I really appreciate talking about this, and it's always so difficult because it really is complex. Yeah, Indian law, the Bureau of Indian Affairs underneath the Department of Interior, totally different set of rules than really anything else in the United States. I've learned so much over the last 15 years when I was working in D.C. and then when also here on the Board of Supervisors on, our agreements with tribes, our opposition with different things. But I want to start by just professing absolute support for tribal sovereignty, for our sovereign nations and for ancestral territory. And, over the years worked really hard to build positive, constructive relationships, even if there is differences of opinion on specific issues. Ironically, the real big issue is casinos at different times. So just contextually, a reminder that the first tribal casino in Sonoma County was at Dry Creek, which is in my district,
in your
up
district,
up on the mountain in Alexander Valley. That was one of the first in the state also that came in. And Dry Creek actually had, the Dry Creek Rancheria had tribal trust land held in trust by the federal government already. So what some people would call a reservation, but they had that land. Now that land, it's unique because if it's held in trust by the U.S. government and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, it means it's subject to their laws, not to us in local zoning. So if we as a county, or if it's in a city, say, hey, you can only build commercial, or you can only build residential, or you can't build anything, or you can build whatever, it can go out, and then the Bureau of Indian Affairs can really approve casino or other kinds of operations.
Yeah.
So we worked, we've worked with the Lytton tribe to reconstitute their homeland outside of Windsor. There was times that was very controversial, even though they had signed an agreement as a part of a congressional act to not pursue gaming in Sonoma County.
Yeah.
Anywhere else. They also, though, do have a casino in San Pablo. There was the Grayton in between Grayton Rancheria, but Federated Indians of Grayton Rancheria. And that's the big casino that we all know. That's the Grayton Casino, and that's its whole story. And also unique because it's there within a cityscape close to 101, close to a real build-out area with agreements with the county and with Rohnert Park. But obviously 3 years ago, the Khoi Nation, which has its ancestral roots in both Lake County and then what they're professing is also in Sonoma County, put in this application and met with some of us and others. And we consistently oppose new casino projects. And so I respectfully agree with that assessment, or respectfully disagree with the desire to build another casino.
Yeah.
We went through the Bureau of Indian Affairs process, which is like a black box. The community rose up and wrote tons of letters, and the board worked hard, and the board ended up taking a position in alignment with the other 5 federally recognized tribes in Sonoma County. That's Kashaya, Cloverdale, Dry Creek, Grayton, and also Lytton. And that was an opposition of this, and there was an assessment that this area over here, was it really trading territory, ancestral grounds? And so anyways, a lot of context here. But basically what happened at the end of the Biden administration, after a whole elongated process, they basically signed this thing over into a trust.
Yeah.
And I will say that it was, a lot of people felt that it was a sham of a process because you put out 1,500 pages of environmental documents. It includes things that need to be mitigated, like fire evacuation, all these other things, and environmental mitigation. And it really was rushed to be signed at the end of the Biden administration after the election was lost, and just signed over without dealing with all those issues. And so I'll just start by saying that. And once again, I respect the Khoi and respect their right to put in this application and to pursue it. But recently, a similar application was pulled back from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. That was Scotts Valley, another determination similar. And so right now, what we are continuing to do is to align in the same position that we've had in opposition to this, but also supportive of the other tribes and their determinations. So there's a lawsuit by Grayton, there's a lawsuit by Lytton, there's a lawsuit by the governor's office that we are lined up with on all 3 of those.
Well, I know a lot of the opposition, and particularly with Grayton, is that this is not part of their ancestral land, that they were more in the Lake County area, and that this was more of a Pomo land over here. What do you think of that?
Well, it's interesting because Khoi is also part of the Southern Pomo Nation.
True.
And I would say that a part of that, I would agree by agreeing with the other tribes in that determination. You know, for me, look at me. I'm a white guy whose parents moved here in the 70s. I have not been here since time immemorial, and so I respect Khoi and their people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, looking at the issues that, for instance, if you approve this casino, then the Dry Creek Rancheria Casino up on the hill that they have 2,000 members is basically defunct. So if the Bureau of Indian Affairs approves of this, then they also, and the other 5 federally recognized tribes say, hey, you haven't been involved in the cultural, preservation rules, the requirements under permitting and others. So once again, I'm going to continue to give value to everything and to the right for COI to propose this. But the board has continued to come out and state our position. And ultimately, this is now under federal review in a different way. It's not just the Bureau of Indian Affairs. It's also under review in the courts. It's under review by the judiciary, not just the judiciary, but Department of Justice. And so there's a real question of where it goes right now. So the neighbors are very active. They're very interested in where things are going. You can tell I'm taking a very tenured approach. I'm not get too high or too low. I've been through so many of these issues with, respectfully, with the Bureau of Indian Affairs that I can't game it. I was very surprised that at the end of the Biden administration, without really, after requesting thousands of letters and review, they didn't review any of it. And they signed it over right before leaving office. And now, ironically, it's being under review by the Trump administration because they're trying to unwind those Biden administration decisions that were in the final days.
Yeah. Well, as you know,
how ironic is that?
Yeah.
So
well, and as you note, the role of the county is pretty limited. Ultimately,
it is.
I mean, this is a matter of tribal sovereignty, which is really more of a federal determination, and then they determine whether to take it into trust, so as with Grayton, as with Alexander Valley, Dry Creek, we have to just manage it as best we can as a county.
The governor's case, in which we are aligned with, and also the town of Windsor, really depends on, there's these different versions, the two-part test, the other things, there's these different legal parameters, but the most recent few, the Scotts Valley and COI and one other, is really based upon the tribes assessing that they had trading routes in these areas. And so that's where the tribes that we've consistently worked with here have said this is our ancestral territory. The other thing is some tribes are federally recognized, some are not, because there was Indian Termination Acts, Rancheria Act back in the days that forced a lot of tribes to be landless. Right. So I think the important thing to remember is as much as we talk about these issues in current day, there's huge historical trauma.
Sure. Yeah.
And, ironically, many of the tribal casinos, including if this happens with COI, is going to be to support their people. Yeah. So,
understood.
Once again, they have a right and the respectful right to petition their government as a government of their own. And we have a right to say we oppose based on these grounds.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, let's switch gears to another subject, which was high on the agenda today, wildfires. Okay. Yeah. It's June, and we're already officially in fire season, or as our director of Department of Emergency Management points out, there is no such thing as fire season. It's kind of become a year-round thing, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of scary. But anyway, you got an overview.
Isn't it crazy?
It is crazy.
Let's realize also that, for me, my life, I'm 47, my life here, up until 2017 and our Tubbs, Nuns, Pocket Fire, that Sonoma complex, that time of the year, September, October, the harvest
was traditional.
There wasn't, we had fires, but the epic wind-driven natural disasters that are not manageable, those are true disasters. Yeah. That's very different from anything else. And so I think the first thing for everybody to remember is that it's June. Last year, a week from now, we had the Point Fire. We had to do evacuations in Dry Creek up near Lake Sonoma. Yeah. And yet at the same time, even though there was winds, just like we have now, and even though there's a lot of vegetation like we have now, it was a big fire, but it was manageable because we did not have catastrophic offshore winds, Diablo winds coming out of the Utah Basin that are a blowtorch and a blow dryer, like what happened in Santa Ana in January of this year. So there's a big difference if you smell smoke in the air and if it's a normal day and it's not a red flag warning, which means high wind, low relative humidity, and a lot of dry vegetation ready to burn. If we don't have those designations, I tell people, don't be afraid. Check socoemergency.org. Go look at different things. Make sure you're but don't what you have to watch out for, there's 3 different tiers now. Number 1 is fire weather watch, which is expecting high winds and all these conditions. Red flag, which means, let's go from moderate to like, we have to be ready.
Yeah.
You make sure you have your go suitcase and make sure you have your other stuff. Today at the presentation, Jeff Duvall came up to us and said, you know, purple flag. Well, I mean, they color it purple. And what
PDS, particularly dangerous situation.
So the weather
So
service,
it's actually worse than a red flag.
Yeah,
it's now higher.
It's kind of ironic.
Extreme.
I never think
red
of purple
flag.
as worse than red
that's
in
true.
life.
That's true.
But yeah, so we're going to have now 3 tiers that you watch out for. So fire weather watch, and you can look at this anytime you look up on your weather app or anything. You'll see if it's, and you can Google this. Some people say, where do I get the information? Like, it's amazing. There's this thing called Google and another thing called Bing and all of these search engines. You can say, is there a red flag warning for my area? But I think it's a reminder to everybody that in January of this year down in the LA area, this is when they put this purple or this particularly dangerous situation, PDS, above a red flag warning. And you could see it coming. Yeah. And so at that point, you're going to get evacuations. The only thing you can do is get out of the way so that the first responders don't have to save lives. Right. They can defend property. Yeah. Because otherwise they got to run around and evacuate people.
What was interesting today, we learned that while the fires are going on in January in LA, we came very close up here. It didn't become clear to me how close we were. We had very similar situations, and you know, thankfully we didn't have the winds that really drove it up here. But as Ben Nichols and others were reporting, we came very close then too. And again, this is January, right? Yeah. This is not the time. This is the year we're more worried about floods.
And a big rain year.
Right, exactly. I mean, well, fortunately, February was a big rain year.
Big rain year. Yeah. And yet at the same time, we have this boom and bust cycle, not this slow kind of meandering rains like it felt, not like it felt it used to be. I mean, for people who don't want to talk about climate change, I say, look at the charts. I mean, like Sonoma water in our forecast-informed reservoir operations, our precipitation index, all of our advanced forecasting, it shows that we are in a cycle or in a horrible sequence that will get worse of whiplash, weather whiplash. You know, we might get the same amount of rain that we averaged in 1980, but when it comes from 2 events where the water just flushes right down the river and we're trying to capture and move it back onto the ground and soak it versus those slow storms that the ground had the ability to penetrate and water really sink in. I mean, it's we are in a different reality.
Well, but I want to go back to your point, which I think it was very important, which is encouraging people to be ready, but not scared. Right. Yeah. And it's hard as we go into the fire season because the start of the year people are on edge. But you also made the point today when you talked to the team about how far we've come since 2017. Oh, yeah. And it's important to share that. What are your thoughts on that?
I appreciate you mentioning that because the first thing is people oftentimes look at me and say, if we had the Tubbs fire again, would what we've done be able to stop it? Yeah. And if you ask the firefighters, they say no. If there is an ignition start, when you have 100-mile-an-hour winds on the peaks and you have vegetation ready to roll, there's no way to devegetate an entire... We live in Sonoma County. Right. Things like to grow here, whether it was Luther Burbank growing fruits and vegetables or the vines, but also vegetation out in the hills. There is no way to completely de-risk our lives. Right. That's the first thing to say. But secondly from that is that what we are preparing ourselves for is that if we're evacuated, if we're smart, that you manage all the things that you have control over. It's kind of like the serenity prayer, right? Yeah. You know, give me the strength to manage the things I can,
and the wisdom to know the difference.
Wisdom to know the difference, the ability to let go of those things that I don't. I just bludgeoned the serenity prayer. Usually I hit it. But it's like I can't manage I can't decide that it's going to be less wind, but I can decide that I've done the work on the defensible space around my property. I can decide that I have my right, the things that are really important to me. I can decide that I've changed the vents on my house and moved the wood stacks. I can make sure that I've set everything up so that if I leave and embers fall on my porch, I'm not going to lose my house in that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the bottom line is we have more strike teams out there. We got more fixed wing aircraft out there. We are far better prepared than we are in 2017. Now, that doesn't mean we would stop the Tubbs fire, but we would have a better shot.
I go back to your real question. So what's different, right? I mean, we have a top-in-class Department of Emergency Management. We have evacuation zones. We have early alert and warning systems. We have opt-in systems, opt-out systems that people are keyed into. We have weather radios. We have COPE and CERT teams up in the hills.
We have communications in English and Spanish.
Yeah, we've done evacuations trainings with key communities and kind of those dead-end areas up in the mountains. We have multi-language, not just bilanguage, but multi-language ability. The firefighting, we have upstaffing during red flag events. We have an integrated system. There's an ability to do an all-call that they did last year, Chief Nichols, to get all available. Basically, they have a new call system that can get everybody to attack when it's really relevant. We have the ability to do night attacks with Chinook helicopters and other things like that. Yeah, that make significant differences.
We got a C-130 in Sacramento. I could be here in 19 minutes.
Yeah,
I
mean, this is a different setup, and still. If you don't manage your risk, nobody can save you.
Good point.
Great leader in the fire community, Marshall Turbeville. Every community meeting we go to, he looks at people and says, at the moment you need me the most, I hate to say it, but I'm probably not going to be there.
Yeah.
When, isn't that kind of a crazy thing to have a professional? But he's like, when the whole world's on fire, if you think I'm going to be there at your house, the only way that I can help save your house is if you've helped me beforehand.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you're gone so that I don't have to evacuate you instead of saving your property and other properties.
Well, I like what Captain Chief Nichols said today. He was encouraging homeowners, you play defense, we'll play offense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The point you brought up earlier is, and I think it's a real important one, is that anytime there's smoke in the air, wind, and we're in this season, in my office, we start to get a lot of calls from people that are very afraid. And what I try to not just say, but I try to be what I want to see in the world is, okay, after our fires, we said Sonoma strong, right? We wanted to turn from victims into survivors into thrivers, right? We went from Sonoma strong into Sonoma ready. And Sonoma ready is like still this kind of neurotic, like, okay, we need to test our systems. We need to do this.
Yeah.
And what I want to be is Sonoma safe, right? Like, Sonoma prepared. Those are words that are Sonoma resolved, right? Like, these are the risks we have in our world. Risk is always going to be there, but we're okay if we take care of what we need to, and there will be loss in spite of it all.
Yeah. Well, good point. Well, we did hear today that, we have a lot of vegetation growth this winter. Yeah. The fuel loads are high. Yeah. We can expect some risk this year. So, and so people do need to get ready. I do want to note that it's hard to be optimistic about California getting much help from the federal government. I want to bring this up, and I'd like to hear, maybe I'm wrong about that, but particularly in the area of wildfire preparation. In fact, FEMA recently pulled the grant, $110 million in BRIC grants for Sonoma, Napa, and Mendocino counties. And these are funding that was helped to target homeowners and other property owners to reduce vegetation and lessen the risks of the wildfire. I mean, people are counting on those funds. And to get that pulled out now is it's poor timing, if nonetheless.
Yeah,
and it can be crippling. Yeah,
it's absurd. It's ridiculous politics. It's a bait and switch. I mean, I don't usually get so red meat in my comments. I'm usually pretty resolved. I don't like to tick off everybody, but I'm ticked off. I mean, we went through years of planning and detailed work and scientific evaluation to prove true risk reduction with these grants. We got announced, also I used to be a part with the National Association of Counties, where I'm the president now, where we lobbied for these changes that Congress signed and the president signed.
And it was President
8 years
Trump
ago.
in his first, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so now you just come out and you're just kind of hacking and burning government programs when you tell us that we need to be hacking and slashing vegetation, and all you're doing is increasing the risk for us and then trying to blame us for that. So it's crap. It's total BS. They said, there was a stupid generalization that came out that said that these projects are not merit-based and they don't really show true risk reduction. That's crap. Look at the hundreds and hundreds of pages of mapping and evaluation. So 110 million in just our little region. Outside of that, let's say another just under $1 billion in other BRIC grants that are all kinds of risk reduction projects, earthquake retrofitting on water systems, like things up and down that are demonstrable. So this was a real big bummer. We were going to go into 3 different areas of high fire risk in Sonoma County. We'd already done the planning and outreach, providing subsidies to homeowners to do home hardening, also vegetation management around their properties. So imagine this. We were going to give tax dollars back to taxpayers to do that work around their house, instead of us just saying, hey, you have a $5,000 bill, and if you don't pay this, we're going to lien your property. Yeah. So, this is the kind of stuff that's ridiculous. And, I'm in this funny position right now, this kind of with being the president of the national counties, where, it's not just this and fire risk and FEMA. Right now we're dealing with, this is breaking contracts that we have done. But now it's going into other areas, the budget reconciliation process, the so-called big, beautiful bill that looks at $800 billion in Medicaid. They say savings, but it's really cuts. Part of it is to give taxes back to high net worth individuals, the wealthy. And then on the other side, you're talking about, we still have to take care of everybody here in counties.
Right. We're safety
Just
net.
because the federal government cuts the tax money that comes back that we in California actually pay, doesn't mean that we can stop taking care of the vulnerable in our community at all.
Doesn't mean the need goes away.
We're still even required by law not to turn people away from our facilities, and yet now the tools are being taken away. So there's a bunch of things that are way beyond the headlines, whether you watch MSNBC or Fox News or CNN or anything in between. If you really look at the fact that these cuts are looking to be paid back by increasing taxes on municipal bonds, things that we do bridges and roads with, that there's another tax increase on state and local, like your property taxes getting double taxed. There's a lot of just kind of stuff that is not just suspect. It's just counter to. Yeah. And once again, the people voted, and I'm okay with conservative policy if that's what's going to get implemented and people vote for that. But disruption for the sake of disruption, like bloodying up a system and making it not deliver, and then pointing at it that it doesn't deliver, and then killing it more. Right. That's intentional.
Demonizing it in some ways. Yeah.
Like if you trip somebody and then you say, "Hey, you can't be on the team because you can't run.
You're too clumsy."
Right?
Yeah.
Like when that's an institutional effort. Yeah. It's garbage.
Well, it's fun. It's frustrating, but I know the state's trying to make up some of those funds, and they can, and we're gonna try to. Yeah. Yeah.
We'll all do the best with what we have. I think the first goal is that you don't want to move out of a core service, but you have to decide, who are those that are operating, whether it's our funding of nonprofits and a behavioral health system, whether it's, us and our work in different areas. You have to invest in what is the highest success. We always try to do that, right? We always want to improve government delivery. There's always issues in any kind of massive system. But at the same time, I go to my kids' school and I have to be not only inspired, but I have to remind myself that we are fighting for their futures, that I and we cannot subject our kids to a pessimistic future. So you got to rise up and get busy and stay active instead of infecting them with this negative blah that perpetuates on the anti-social media networks.
Well, I think it's the kids sometimes who inspire us.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
They're look at
they're helping us to put things in perspective. Yeah. Well, on a more happier note, I just want to mention.
Scout. He was an Eagle Scout, wasn't he?
That's right. Yeah. Scouting was a great thing. Yeah. I just want to, on a final note, I just want to mention a real positive story. We finally have a smart service going to Windsor. And we got the opening of a train station. I'm
going to give a shout out to Deb Fudge, council member there, longtime smart board powerhouse, chair of that board for many years. It's going to, it started this weekend. There's going to be a ribbon cutting community event. And then we also have the money secured. Thank goodness for the state, and a part of this, the former bipartisan infrastructure plan to get it up, not just to Hillsburg, but north of Hillsburg.
That's fantastic. I mean, if we let's get to Hillsburg, right?
And then, it's set to be funded to go all the way to Lytton, which is north of Hillsburg, which means after that, we got legislation change to allow a stop to be reviewed and considered in Geyserville.
Oh, great.
And then Cloverdale from there. So it'll still take years, but, my work and the work of others has been to deliver on the promise that was made to everybody, that if you pay in these taxes, we're going to bring this thing to you.
Well, I think that's great. We're looking forward to taking the train up for the 4th of July and see the fireworks in Windsor. We like that. So we think that's going to be our plan this year. All right. Anything else you want to share today? We've gone through a lot.
I just want to say that it's funny because you talk about the 4th of July and we've had cancellations depending on stuff of fireworks sales, but then also even some of if it's drought conditions. I want to say something that was crazy. The other day, the Hillsburg Chamber of Commerce, not the other day, quite a few months ago, my family and I were driving through town and they had the drone display. They hired, and there was hundreds of drones that were doing these amazing light show and other things, and it was one of the coolest things that I've seen in a while.
It's hard to fathom.
And I met with a guy the other day who's like, I have a whole plan to deploy those drones for fire protection and other things like that.
Wow.
And then there's other people who worry that it's Skynet. Like I watched Terminator with my kid the other day, and Rise of the Machines. But anyways. It's a pleasure to be with you here in Sonoma County.
I always enjoy our conversations. We covered a lot, but we got to wrap it up. But I hope, and I hope you come back again so we can talk some more.
This is good.
But these are all important issues for all of us. And
happy Pride Month.
There you go.
Today we celebrated the Juneteenth upcoming in mid-June. The true emancipation, not the Emancipation Proclamation.
Right.
That's being put on. There's a big, the North Bay Black Chamber is putting on an amazing Juneteenth and Martin Luther King event here. I encourage people to look that up and go to it. And then we had these wonderful individuals, so inspiring, representing so many organizations on Pride, LGBTQI plus, and just getting out there and just talking about revolutionary love.
Yeah.
Right? There was no hate. They were talking about being hated on and being made victims, but and I just want to say that it was the love in that room today. Right. I just appreciate it, and I love it.
It was very inspiring. Those are real positive notes at every board meeting, especially to sort of end on, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. Well, Supervisor Gore, thank you for taking time to visit with us today. And to our listeners, we'd like to give you a chance to not only win one of our SoCo Chat mugs, but also a go bag provided by Supervisor Gore. And just answer be the first to answer our question this week. And that question is very simple, but it's a personal one. What is your evacuation zone? If just be the first to write in with that, and as soon as we verify it's correct, you will win today's prize. And again, if you don't know, it's very easy and quick to look it up. Just go to socoemergency.org. And again, call us at 565-2242 or email us at publicaffairs, one word, @sonoma-county.org. And also, if you have comments about this or any other segment, we'd love to hear from you. Just shoot us a note at one of those same addresses, particularly at publicaffairs@sonoma-county.org. In the meantime, we hope you continue to follow us on Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube, and Apple Music. Don't forget that. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.